and welcome to Connected. Now, whether it's lining up fruit on your phone or shooting aliens on your brand new console, gaming is everywhere and it is here to stay. Not only that, it's an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars. But why is there still so much of a divide when it comes to gaming? Well, to help us answer this and other questions, we'll be connecting to Kevin Lin. He's the co-founder of Twitch and the founder of blockchain company Meta Theory. And Jay Chern, he's a filmmaker, and don't let his youthful looks fool you. He is a retired professional gamer. I'm going to start with you, Kevin, here, and it's almost like an existential question. What is the essence of gaming to you?
I mean, gaming is fun. It's social. It really is a social fabric. It's culture, it's art, it's science, it's competition, it's storytelling, it's world building, and it is a global cultural instrument that really does span country to country. I love Japanese games, Korean games, games made in the U.S. and Europe, all over the world, and it really does bring people together online. And it is increasingly important. It is increasingly more of what we do online, what the younger generation does online, is play video games.
Now, with that answer, I feel it's almost redundant asking you, Jay, the same question, but I will ask you as someone who's kind of been on all sides of it. What is gaming to you?
Well, I mean, for most of my life, gaming is really about the competition, whether it was from the console games, playing like Mario Kart and when Quake, and then I competed in Counter-Strike. And then it was about a team effort also. So I think playing RPGs and then being able to share with the community about the adventure that you're going on together, it ended up being, even though it was a competition in the beginning, at least for me personally, playing games, that was very fun, and it was very addicting. So, but after that, it was more about the community, the friends you build while playing the games, and then it actually reflects life in a sense.
But let me go back to you, Kevin. Given what you said about gaming, what games do you play now? What kind of games, or do you still play?
Yeah, I still play here and there. Quite busy these days, unfortunately, so not as much game time as I'd like. I mean, I played since I was a kid, since Atari. My brother had an Atari that he left me when he went for college when I was just like a 4 or 5 year old. These days, games I continue to play. Teamfight Tactics by Riot Games. It's a sort of it's a tactics game. It's a super fun, what they call auto battler genre. And I like it because I can play it while doing other stuff, running errands, doing chores. It's a little bit more, there's a little bit of time gap between actual activity that you need to participate in. And then I play a lot of roguelike games and ARPGs lately. That's what we're building. And so we're building in that genre space. And so let's see, I mean, Hades, I love Hades, amazing roguelike game that came out a couple years ago. And then, StarCraft 2, I actually started playing again very recently. That's the game that really spawned the idea around Twitch, my last company. So seems like there's a little bit of a resurgence of interest in that game. So I'm happy to see that.
So Jay, I saw you nodding there at StarCraft 2 in particular. For someone like me who definitely is not in that realm, explain to me what the attraction of that particular game is, and perhaps what the attraction of games to you is. What would you go for?
Oh yeah, I think StarCraft 1 and especially StarCraft 2, it's such a beautiful game. I feel like the strategies and then also the micro and macro techniques you need to be able to kind of build up your army and then strategize to how to defeat your enemy. So I feel like the backstory is really interesting as well. And I feel like it was one of those iconic games that was streamed a lot of huge competitions, and you could see the skill level needed, like the concentration and also the ability to be able to manage so many things at once. I feel like this is what made StarCraft so challenging and fun to watch. But I feel like a lot of like first-person shooter games, whether it's Counter-Strike or now it's Apex Legend, Fortnite. I feel like those are a lot of multiplayer online games that you can play with a community.
Gaming is such a massive industry. There's a lot to talk about here, but at the same time, I don't see much journalism about it. Why do you think that is, Kevin?
Actually, I mean, gaming journalism is quite vibrant. I'd say that what you're saying is somewhat true about regular coverage by mainstream media. I think every now and then you'll see, it's usually somewhat like neutral to negative news sometimes. Historically, there was a lot of antagonism between the media industry and the gaming industry in terms of attention. It does take up a lot of time. Like your average gamer is playing about 90 minutes a day, and sort of increasingly watching less of traditional media. Online media is still growing very, very, very quickly in the youth, but TV and movies and news, right, that falls into that category. So there's always been this little antagonistic relationship between the two, and so there wasn't a lot of positive coverage. But there's a lot of actually very large gaming journalist companies across the globe that cover everything from games development, art in gaming, all the way to game reviews and gameplay, and then more increasingly in the last 10 years, the culture of gaming. What's going on in the creator world around video games. Video games are the third largest and sometimes second largest category in YouTube viewing, for instance, just after entertainment, and as a lump of music videos, TV shows, and so on. So it's quite a large category. And if you consider online streaming watching, people are watching also 90 minutes a day on average on YouTube gaming or Twitch or other similar live streaming platforms. The game industry itself is sort of leveraging itself to promote journalists and so on. No, this is very natural, right? There are journalists that work at Forbes and Washington Post and BBC and CNN and at New York Times whose job it is to cover the games industry. I think there may be what you don't see out there in general for the public is regular coverage, right? But there's a lot. And I think the other thing about this industry is they have sort of taken a more direct approach to communicating with their fans and communicating with the gaming audience at large. They're much more technologically savvy. And so they use tools like online video tools. They use social media. They use Discord. They use other direct-to-consumer tools to market directly. And you'll see, hundreds of millions of views, sometimes billions on game trailers on YouTube during a game trailer launch, which is, rivals that of a music video launch, as an example. So it's there. I mean, I think, historically it was, as I mentioned, somewhat, pushed down and stigmatized. Gaming when I was growing up was stigmatized. It was an activity that was not good for you. It was a waste of time. It was not a useful hobby. It wasn't a sport. You didn't go outside. You were trapped in your room all day playing video games. But it is a large industry. It is $200 billion a year industry. That makes it larger than TV and film combined. It makes it larger than music by an order of magnitude. It makes it larger than sports. And it is also the most engaged media format that we participate in as a species for the let's say under 35, maybe even under 40 generations. And so it's the biggest thing for some reason people don't really talk about on a regular basis, but it's there.
So, as you said, looking at the numbers and figures, it is a huge thing. But there are also those who play for pleasure, and those who devote their life, make it almost a career. So, as we mentioned there, Jay is a retired gamer and he's a filmmaker. So we asked him to delve into the life of the everyday life of a pro gamer to find out what it takes.
Well, there's no problem. If you had a gun, shoot him in the head.
What does it take to be a pro gamer in Taiwan? This is Gamer B, a pro gamer specializing in fighting games.
我觉得当电竞选手，因为我当的时间很久了，我从差不多2012年当到现在已经10年了。然后我花了这么多时间之后，我就开始学习到，就是当电竞选手持续想要赢下去的动力。 这一点我其实发现很多人都没有。
Since placing second at EVO 2015, Gamer B is still searching for a first place finish at a major championship.
我是现在43岁，然后我是 Fighting Game 里面全世界最老的格斗游戏电竞选手了。因为在我当上 Pro 的那一年，32岁的时候，我其实我的身体恢复的速度啊，然后也没有太多伤痛。可是这2-3年的时间，其实身体就渐渐有出现很多状况。
This is So Bad Rush, 39 years of age, Taiwan's StarCraft 1 champion, a retired pro gamer who now casts, runs tournaments, and streams.
台湾其实就跟世界各国应该都是差不多的。对，虽然我是台湾的冠军选手，可是我其实从来没有真的仰赖这个赚月薪。我们就是1年1度的 World Cyber Game， 然后拿个奖金这样子出国比赛，对，然后就开开心心的。那时候比较像是这样子。所以像我介绍自己，我都会说我曾经是台湾冠军，但对，也是因为台湾听起来比较厉害啊，对 ，Pro Gamer 会很多嘛。那时候其实完全没办法养活自己，所以这也是为什么在后来我说2010年的左右 StarCraft 2出的时候，其实我并不是想着要去当选手，虽然我还是很强，对，可是我其实比较想的会是要办一个台湾的职业联赛，那都是 TSL， 就会想着说啊，那我觉得办比赛给现在的小朋友们可能会比自己去打比赛来的更有意义。
正常来说，一天的练习时间，如果只论打格斗游戏的部分的话，应该是4小时到6小时以上。但是因为我们同时当职业选手，可能还有其他的事情要做，谈赞助商，或者是说像我有在开直播，然后再加上我现在还需要额外去做运动，来维持身体的健康，所以这可能就一天要占掉3个小时。所以这些东西真的加起来，我们一天，老实说，真的要投入在格斗游戏上面或者电竞上面，一天12小时，我觉得是很基本的。我身为一个43岁的电竞选手，我每一天都在跟自己对抗，如何去找到自己独特的训练方式，去克服这个身体的状况，然后还能够赢，然后拿到冠军，我就觉得说我真的达成了一件几乎不可能的事情。
So Jay, you were in the competition circuit, and at one point you were really on top of your game. Now you spent quite a bit of time with these guys. After that, did it validate your decision to quit, or did it make you feel like you could have gone on and perhaps continued your reign at the top?
I feel like, since I'm 41 this year, so I'm close to, Gamer B is only 2 years older than me, but he went pro a lot later. But I think it was interesting because like talking to him, he played games since he was like 5 or 6, and it was always a big part of his life. And he just decided he realized his passion was really in competing and try to better himself. As for myself, I feel like with Counter-Strike, maybe my reaction time isn't as fast as when I was in high school. So I think it's good that I stepped away.
Kevin, what do you develop games for? Is it for the individual to have that gaming experience, or do you ever look at it and think this would make a good esport? This would be good for the masses?
Yeah, we're a relatively new studio, so we've been working together for about 1.5 years now. We are working on both. We're trying to build games that we can bring to market quickly. That's largely a Web3 thing. It's a very nascent market in terms of utilization of blockchain for video games. We're sort of taking a different approach and using blockchain in a sort of more simple way of just ownership for now. But yes, we do want to do both storytelling, sort of solo play, story-driven, and also competitive play. Hopefully competitive and good enough that it could become, a balanced esport.
And Jay, what was the toughest thing about being a competitive player? We heard about the grueling schedule they had and the injuries you can get also. But for you, mentally, what was the toughest thing for you?
I think part of the difficulty, as Kevin alluded to a little earlier, was gaming definitely wasn't kind of accepted by the masses. Or so when we're trying to be a professional gamer, whether it's support from our parents or even our friends that aren't playing, there's definitely some pressure or trying to go that route. And then additionally, I feel like with a lot of games, as Gamer B mentioned, it feels like you're just playing a game in front of a computer, but it's really tiring, whether it's like prepping strategies. You have to be physically fit. So you need to exercise, and that definitely affects your ability to focus and then practice for extended periods of time. So I feel like as far as getting that support, from the people around you and whole system, like what I was asking Gamer B about, like, oh, does he have an agent or does he have a manager? Because if you're on a basketball team, you have trainers, you have managers, you have people who can support you, whether professionally, and a lot of that isn't in the system yet, or at least not for all the games.
So let me take it to Kevin then. Kevin, you made a career out of gaming and the whole idea of gaming. So is that support system being created now? Do you find it being more accepted? And what are you doing to kind of make it more mainstream, or to make it kind of thing for a parent to think, hey, my kid's going to be a gamer, like a top golfer or a top tennis player?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a lot of the work that a bunch of us in the industry, it took a movement to establish a lot of the infrastructure Jay and Gamer B and Soba had mentioned. And it's really only been around for about 10 years in most of the world. If you zoom out 10 years past, in the late, sort of early 2000s, let's say, in Korea, this concept of being a pro gamer, an e-player, really took off there, like so many insane cultural movements do in Korea. And back then, while the rest of the world was sort of shunning and pushing down video games in general, Korea fully embraced it. And if you were a pro player of StarCraft 1, what Jay mentioned, the predecessor to StarCraft 2, which really kicked off this wave, in my opinion, of esports starting in 2011, 2012. If you go backwards in time, Korea had infrastructure. You could get a reasonable salary. You can get millions of dollars in sponsorships as a pro gamer. You were driving fancy cars. It was all the typical Gen X stuff. You were driving fancy cars. You were dating, swimsuit models, and you were all over the news in Korea. Everywhere else, it was still stigmatized. Now in 2011, as it grew, this is not complete by any means everywhere in the world, but I would say in the United States, in Europe, in most of Europe, in China, in Korea, and increasingly, I'd say in Japan, there is that support infrastructure, and so you might get hired by a team to play for them, and then you'd have a regular annual salary that you can use to support yourself. In some games, like League of Legends or Dota, that salary might be millions of dollars for a 16 to 18-year-old, and the prizing you might win, and the sponsorship you might win, and the money you might earn by creating content on Twitch or YouTube or TikTok or elsewhere is in the millions of dollars a year. And so it's become a real career. It's been a strong career. But in many places, like Taiwan, that infrastructure is not here. There's not that sense of reliable salary. And in many games, Street Fighter even, very popular games, Smash Brothers, the salaries are much lower across the world. I don't know the recent averages, but let's say they're probably around, 3 to 5K per month per player. So very sustainable in terms of if you want to do that as a career. But flashback 10 years before that last movement of the last decade, you were lucky if you got your travel paid.
You mentioned Taiwan here. Now, as you probably noticed, I'm not exactly a video game expert. So I asked Tomasz, one of our producers on Connected, what he would like to know about video games in Taiwan. Listen to this.
Oh, hi. Didn't see you there, trope.gif. I'm Tomasz, capital G, capital N, gaming nerd. Here's my ID. Taiwan is connected to the video game industry in a lot of ways. Most of the key components in this thing were probably made not too far from where I'm sitting right now. But Taiwan's international visibility in video game output is still relatively low. Even success stories like Detention or The Legend of Tianding seem relatively niche, especially put against AAA publishers. My question to the panelists is, Should Taiwan continue drawing on its unique culture and rich history at the risk of staying in a niche? Or should local developers aim for a more international audience at the risk of diluting their Taiwanese character?
I'll let you take that first, Kevin.
Sure, excellent question, Tomas. I'd love to hang out and discuss this sometime. Actually, I think it can do both. I mean, there's no reason you can't. But if you want to go big, it doesn't mean you can't lean on those cultural stories. It's not so much about the story that restricts you from going big. There's a game maker in Atlanta that uses, Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology for their storytelling. They don't need that part. They're just building an awesome competitive game. And so you can lean on it, certainly. It's not mutually exclusive. It's not a mutually exclusive thing to do. In the case of Legend of Tianding, which is an awesome game, perhaps there are too many variables to determine if a game goes big globally, right? The game could be amazing, well built, great storytelling, great cultural storytelling that in this case is relevant for the Taiwanese cultural storytelling and mythology, but might not make it big because marketing, because publishing, because timing. There's lots of reasons that great games don't make it big. And so you just have to keep trying, and you have to keep working together as an industry to drive it forward. You have to invest more dollars into development, quality, marketing. And I'd say a little bit of quick history about the Taiwan development community. We used to make huge games. We used to make big MMOs, games that are, rival the scale and quality of World of Warcraft and things like that, more recognizable household games that used to be exported in this region. But then a lot of the talent got eaten up by outsource work. They were getting paid more to do outsource work, largely for social casino games, sort of more simple game design that was high monetizing. But I do think there's a general desire by the development community here, which has been doing it for over 20 years, to do something bigger, to put Taiwan on the map in terms of game development. That's a choice the industry has to make. Now, there's a lot of infrastructure you need, right? There's funding, there's publishing services, that marketing I mentioned. But the talent is most certainly here. In my experience, in just the last, really just working with this team for less than a year now here in Taipei, the talent is there. The engineering quality is top notch. The art quality is top notch. Storytelling, the thinking, the systems design thinking, everything that goes into great game design is here. It just needs, a decision that, where do people want to go? And it's not necessarily industry wide, but it certainly helps to have a community starting to think about, tougher game problems. And then thinking about, where do we go globally? Do we target the English speaking audience? Do we target China? Do we target the Southeast Asia audience? There's a lot of choices there.
Kevin, I have to warn you, my producer is probably going to take you up on that offer. So don't be surprised if you get a call right after the show. Jay, so going, as a filmmaker, and as Kevin was saying, this whole idea of storylines and storytelling, like what from that resonates for you when you look at a game, and where has Taiwan got it right in the type of games that they produce?
I feel like at the end of the day, the gamer doesn't care how much time or how much money you spend on creating that experience. They just want to have fun. So I feel like, as Kevin mentioned, so as long as Taiwan keeps trying and uses kind of the rich cultural history plus the kind of melting pot of ideas that is in Taiwan, the technical know-how is definitely here.
In that case, Kevin, who are you developing your games for? Are you looking at geography, geographical lines, genres? What is it that you're looking to hit?
Yeah, great question. I mean, multiple. So we have a couple of things in development, a couple of games in development. One is very genre specific, and so that is more genre based targeting, and that's global audience. But we're targeting, broadly, not just blockchain gamers, to be specific. We're targeting mainstream. We want to build games that are natural. They're normal games. They feel like a normal game. They're fun. They may be competitive. They may be, a single story playing session. But they're interesting to any gamer out there. Regionally, Taiwan is a lot of people say Taiwan's too small of a market, but actually, Taiwanese gamers punch way above their weight in terms of both engagement and monetization. They do spend in video games. Southeast Asia is a big target for us. It's a huge and fast-growing region. It's a very young audience.
What kind of genre are they into there? It seems like these geographical locations prefer certain kinds of games.
Yeah, it varies country to country. And so the top games in the region proper as a whole, if you sum it up, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, etc., there's games like Free Fire, which is made by a game company called Garena. And then there's MOBA games, which League of Legends really popularized, although Dota was the first version of this. But those are the competitive games. The reality is a lot of the games that are most popular that people actually play any given day are hyper casual. People spend a lot of time in very, very casual, simplistic, single player mobile games. That is what takes up most time, particularly as you age up, as you get older as a gamer. You play these really simple games that aren't really fun and you feel guilty playing them. And so one thing we hope is we make games that are a bit more engaging and competitive, but sort of light on the competition so that, a 60-year-old could play it with their friends and it's still really fun, but it's not this like mindless button pushing casino style game.
Thank you to both my guests, Kevin Lin and Jay Chern, for sharing their thoughts and predictions on the future of video games. And to our viewers, thanks for your company. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Remember to visit our website, TaiwanPlus.com, and our YouTube channel, and stay connected to Taiwan Plus.